I'm not saying that the Panthers put Bryce Young in a tremendous position to succeed. They didn't. But clearly that was overstated a little bit, right?
You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a Monster Monday presented, of course, by DraftKings. I am Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman, 5 teams, 7 years, classic journeyman. Thank goodness, because it enabled me to get all these different broadcasting gigs, which are awesome. I'll be in the booth tonight for the Jags and the Bills, Westwood One Radio. If you're driving around, just hit the seek button. You hear Jags Bills. That's me, unless you're in Jacksonville or in Buffalo. No TV game this weekend. I think it was the only time, or the first time in like 6 years, and it's the only time this season I was kind of off from TV. It was a quirk in the schedule, so was able to do some cool things thanks to the Game Time app. Post Malone Friday night, Penn State Saturday. Be a husband, be a dad. That was pretty awesome. You can check it out on social if you're intrigued, at Ross Tucker NFL. New week means new winners, by the way. Someone that spreads the word in any way. It shouldn't even be spread the word. It's engages in any way on social media. At Ross Tucker Pod, at Ross Tucker NFL, or takes advantage of any of our sponsors, especially the sponsors that we know are listeners, right? WestShoreHome.com/Ross. FutureFans.com using the code Ross. I've talked to these guys. I know they're listeners. I love supporting you guys and listener-owned businesses. And then the YouTube shout out, YouTube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. Patrons, Cole Avila, Alexander Barrera, David Van Lunen. Come on down. Patreon.com/RT Media. Absolutely love anytime we get some new patrons. Also love talking about all of the games that happened yesterday. It was a doozy. It usually is. It's Big Show time.
The Big Show.
All right, Ross, what were your overall themes from week 3 across the NFL so far?
So I think one, Jack, for sure, is just young quarterbacks turning it over like crazy and making really, really foolish mistakes, right? I mean, the best example was probably just that Colts-Bears game where both Anthony Richardson and Caleb Williams at times had like cringe-worthy interceptions. I think the question, in my mind at least, is they're both really young. I think they're both 21, maybe. They're both very inexperienced. You know, this is Caleb Williams' 3rd start. Richardson probably like his 6th start, 7th maybe. So I believe that they will get better and they will not continue to have these mistakes. The question, I think, is how much better and how much they can limit these mistakes that they're making. Because, by the way, some guys, it's just kind of part of their DNA. Carson Wentz, we saw that. I think that's the case on some level with Josh Allen and Trevor Lawrence, where they're just going to have some silly turnovers from time to time. And if, you know, that's your squad and that's your quarterback, you're going to have to live with it. Certainly, Will Levis falls in that category right now, right? I mean, Will Levis. Now, at least this week, it wasn't like a low light that would be meme worthy. It wasn't like a ridiculous, ludicrous decision. Still a pretty bad pick 6 by Will Levis. So you're seeing that from some of these guys. Although, listen, Jalen Hurts has been turning it over a lot as well, and he had 2 very costly turnovers also. But that was one thing, Jack, that jumped out to me for sure, was these young quarterbacks turning it over and really hurting their team's ability to have a chance to be competitive or win the game. This is one of my themes last week. It's another theme this week, coaching. I mean, coaching. McVay, to be able to get that many points, down multiple scores, multiple times without Cooper Kupp and Nakua is impressive. And the same guys we talked about last week. Kevin O'Connell with Minnesota. Fantastic. Sam Darnold against the Texans, blowing out the Texans, getting to 3-0. Nobody saw that coming. And then Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur and O'Connell are the best examples because it's look what they're getting out of these quarterbacks that have never played close to this well before. Malik Willis was really, really good in that game against his former team yesterday. Really good. And so LaFleur and O'Connell deserve an absolute ton of credit. Speaking of those quarterbacks, it just feels like already, Jack, there's a lot of backup quarterbacks out there. You know, I'm watching, I didn't have a game, right? So I'm watching on the red zone, and Tim Boyle was, I mean, first of all, it was Skylar Thompson. Then Tim Boyle was in the game for the Dolphins. Obviously, Andy Dalton, which we'll get to in a little bit, for Carolina. The aforementioned Malik Willis is playing for the Packers. Herbert can't finish the game. Heineke comes in. We say it every year, backup quarterback doesn't matter at all until it means like almost everything. And there's a big difference between starting quarterbacks and backup quarterbacks. And there's actually a bigger difference from team to team between backup quarterbacks to other backup quarterbacks. The last thing, I just felt like there were some, to me, disappointing. Maybe we should get Walt Anderson on again this week, Jack, like we had him on last week, because there was some disappointing officiating. You know, like the Dak Prescott illegal touching, that was intentional grounding. That has to be a safety against the Ravens. Or Jared Goff, that was a pick six. That wasn't the 2-minute. So there were some things that happened that I thought were didn't even love the lack of a pass interference on the Chiefs late in that game against the Falcons. So I would say those are some of the things that jumped out to me while I was in my chair drinking some Labatt Blue Lights. You know, usually I say with friends and family, living life to the power of we. It was just me watching football. It was to the power of me. Always enjoy Labatt Blue Light responsibly. It's delicious beer. Labatt USA, made up in Buffalo, New York, where I'm going in a couple hours.
All right, Ross, we'll start with the Malik Neighbors show in New York. That is must watch. He leads the Giants to a 21-15 win over Cleveland almost single-handedly.
Unbelievable. He is a fantastic football player. That was the right choice for the Giants. He was by far the best player at by far their biggest position of need. I'll also say I feel like Singletary, I know Saquon's been ridiculous for the Eagles, and I love Saquon and blah, blah, blah. But Singletary's been pretty good for the Giants so far. He's shown some legit juice. Loved his decision to go down at the 1. Very unselfish by Singletary in that game. And Neighbors being this good is making Daniel Jones look better, which is exactly what the Giants needed. They desperately needed that win. I'm surprised that they were that effective against a Browns defense that I think is really good. But the Browns defense, you know, they should put Denzel Ward on Neighbors from the start. And with Garrett banged up with this foot injury or calf or whatever, it's just not quite the same for Cleveland. And then offensively, yikes, that was ugly. Deshaun Watson was sacked like 8 times. Dexter Lawrence was in there the whole game. Brian Burns. I was really expecting more from Cleveland after what they showed. I thought was a step in the right direction on the road in Jacksonville last week. It was a big step back. Give the Giants defense some credit. I mean, the Browns O-line is beat up, but you still got to take advantage of them, and they did.
The Colts ground game, they lead the way in their win, beating the Chicago Bears 21-16.
So I was thinking about what Greg said last week about Anthony Richardson quite a bit watching this game. I'm not sure about him. He makes some spectacular throws. It's really, really hard to win in the NFL. Missing some of the throws that he misses and making some of the decisions that he makes. I just think it's hard to become a winning player doing those things. No matter how spectacular is, it's a good thing that they leaned on the running game. Trey Sermon had a cool touchdown. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor had a nice touchdown. Richardson in the running game is a weapon with his size and speed. But I would say it was the defense that impressed me as much as anything. Jalen Jones got a couple interceptions. I don't really even know much about him. Latu got after Caleb Williams. That strip sack by Latu, the first-round pick for the Colts, was gigantic. Caleb Williams still not great, but you saw some improvement there. They couldn't run the ball at all, even though everybody else had been able to run the ball on the Colts. But you saw some improvement from Caleb Williams, I would say, which was encouraging. Now some of it maybe you'd say was garbage time or whatever, but still threw for a bunch of yards and a couple touchdowns, and maybe that helped him get some confidence going for the rest of the season.
Many are calling for Sam Darnold to win MVP, Ross. Minnesota, they blow out Houston 34-7. They move to 3-0.
And a lot of this, Jack, it really is coaching. Not just O'Connell on the offensive side of the ball, but Flores on defense. This is the second consecutive, in my opinion, really good quarterback. Purdy last week. This week, C.J. Stroud, that just looked like totally helpless against this Vikings defense. And how about Grenard? The Texans didn't think Grenard was really that good. They said, no, we can do better. We can get Danielle Hunter. And Danielle Hunter probably is more physically gifted, but Grenard does it. A lot of it is with grit and effort. And now Grenard, 3 sacks, 6 pressures. Some of that was scheme, but some of that was just him against, some pretty good tackles there for the Texans. That this game was never really even competitive. Jefferson had a solid game. We mentioned Darnold doing, a yeoman's job. It's just unbelievable what he's doing. This game was never, ever close.
Philadelphia, they win a messy game in New Orleans, winning 15-12.
This was a very interesting game. So, first of all, the Eagles totally dominated the action. I don't know what the final numbers were, but it was like at one point, the Eagles had 400 yards of offense, and the Saints had like less than 100. And even at that point, the Saints might have had the lead, or it was like 7-6, because Hurts had a costly fumble, and Hurts had a poor decision for an interception. And the Eagles, I thought, made some really questionable fourth down decisions. But the Eagles' defense was much better, especially the D-line. And without A.J. Brown and with Devontae Smith hurt, they leaned on Saquon Barkley and Dallas Goedert, and those guys delivered. I would say if I'm a Saints fan, that's pretty disappointing. That's like no A.J. Brown, no Devontae Smith. How are we letting Saquon Barkley and Dallas Goedert kill us? How are we letting that happen? Rashid Shaheed did nothing. The Saints could not run it as well. Chris Olave felt like was the one Saints skill guy that really was still very productive. Losing McCoy, the center, hurt the Saints quite a bit, but it was like a different defense for the Eagles. There's no I in football. It's a we thing. An experience best enjoyed together. Smirnoff knows that. That's why it's the perfect vodka for crafting delicious cocktails, easy to make and versatile for any and all fans over 21. They got a lot of good things going. It's the world's #1 vodka. It's an official vodka partner of the NFL. It's award-winning vodka, and they started in 1864. Grab a bottle of Smirnoff at your local retailer and head to Smirnoff.com to find recipes of delicious cocktails perfect for game day. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff #21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Please do not share with anyone under the legal drinking age. Fellas, ladies, it's week 4. If you have any kids in your life and you haven't gone to futurefans.com to get them these incredible storybook-led activity boxes, why not? A bunch of you have sent me emails with your order confirmations, which I love. I've even had multiple friends text me to say, hey, I got a box. It's awesome. I've gotten pictures of some of my friends outside with their kids learning the downs, which is awesome. Future Fans is genius. The key is unlocking a lifetime of memories with your child, whoever it is, any kid in your life, doesn't have to be your child, can be your nephew, your grandchild, whatever, starting right now. Go to futurefans.com to learn more. Use code Ross. Futurefans.com, code Ross.
Justin Fields, he likely is not handing back the quarterback job to Russell Wilson anytime soon. He takes the Steelers to a 3-0 start, beating the Chargers 20-10.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Jack, because actually I think the Steelers deserve a decent amount of credit for not just getting Russell Wilson, but for getting Justin Fields also. They could have just gotten Russell Wilson and said, okay, we're good. But they got another option, and boy, that has paid off big time. The first 2 weeks, it was all defense, and Fields just did enough. This week, Fields did some legit things. I mean, he 25 for 32, 245 yards. That throw to Calvin Austin, the third, was sweet, and Austin has some serious juice. So now if they can run it, both with Fields and without, Pickens is a star, and then you have Freiermuth. If they can get some stuff out of Calvin Austin, the third, that would really be huge. For the Chargers, they finally met someone they couldn't just run the ball down their throat. They couldn't run it down their throat, so they got in obvious passing situations. Herbert couldn't move. He had to end up coming out of the game. And the Steelers, it's just unbelievable how many guys they have. Like Herbig was getting in the backfield after Alex Highsmith. So even though they lose Highsmith, they bring in Herbig, and he gets 4 pressures, 2 sacks on 8 pass rushes. They need to get Herbig involved more. Maybe he will now with this injury to Alex Highsmith. But Watt's going to get the attention, so let Herbig go nuts on the other side.
Bo Nix, he easily leads Denver to a win against the Buccaneers on the road, 26-7.
Kind of told you this was going to happen, right? The 0-2 teams, and then there were going to be some 2-0 teams that were not going to have the same level of success. This was a perfect example. The Bucs aren't really that great. The Broncos aren't really that bad. Bo Nix, the biggest thing is he just didn't turn it over, right? I mean, he handled it well. He ran the ball when he needed to. He did a nice job running the offense. That was the key. Meanwhile, I think the Broncos defense has been pretty legit in every game so far. I don't think that they've been I'm trying to think. I think they've been pretty good every game. The Bucs, like Baker Mayfield, did not have a good game. The Bucs could not do very much. Godwin had that cool touchdown catch. Bucky Irving, the backup running back, was maybe the biggest positive for the Bucs offensively, because other than that, it was absolutely all Broncos defense. Vance Joseph, their D coordinator, did a really nice job. Felt like they were all over Mayfield. What was it? 7 sacks, 9 quarterback hits. The Broncos defense is going to give them a chance in a lot of games this year. If Nix doesn't turn it over, they can be competitive.
Malik Willis, he gets his revenge, beating the Titans easily in Tennessee, 30-14.
Well, certainly the pick 6 from Jair Alexander helped, right, to give some separation there. Levis stared down the out route. Just cannot happen. Levis is learning a lot of lessons early in this year. That's for sure. But the Packers, again, LaFleur, an exquisite game plan. Willis isn't turning it over. He looked so lost whenever he would get in the game for the Titans. And now he looks like he's so comfortable, knows exactly what he's doing. That screen pass to Emmanuel Wilson was awesome. They're really utilizing his legs properly. His legs are a threat. At one point in the early slate, Malik Willis had the most passing yards and the most rushing yards of any player at that point, which is pretty unbelievable. And the thing that's encouraging if you're a Packers fan is to get 2 wins without Jordan Love is huge. And then Hafley in the defense. I think they have like more interceptions this year than they had all year last year already, which is just nuts.
The Andy Dalton era is off to a hot start in Carolina. They beat the Raiders 36-22.
Well, I mean, there's nobody else we could go with, right? For the 11 Oaks hungriest performance. By the way, that meat from 11 Oaks is delicious. I was able to tailgate before Post Malone, able to tailgate before the Penn State game. Genuine Wagyu beef. And if you've seen my social media post on Facebook, facebook.com/RawSectorNFL, I have been to the ranch or the farm or whatever they call it. Their burgers are incredible. The pork, the free-range chicken, they have Angus beef as well. I've seen how they do the Wagyu. If you're local like I am, you can shop in person at the farm store in Newville. But I know a bunch of people, Jack included, have already made orders at 11oaksfarms.com. Get yourself some Central PA Wagyu beef, 11oaksfarms.com. Dalton was incredible. And I'm not saying that the Panthers put Bryce Young in a tremendous position to succeed. They didn't. But clearly that was overstated a little bit, right? Andy Dalton's out here throwing 3 touchdown passes, almost had another one, throwing for over 300 yards. Adam Thielen, pretty good. Deontay Johnson, really good. Chuba Hubbard, offensive line looked pretty good. I mean, it looked a lot different with a veteran, competent quarterback like Dalton than it did with Bryce Young. That had to be a weird situation for Bryce Young in the locker room after the game, on the plane back from Vegas. I would just love to see some of the looks that Bryce Young got from some of the other guys.
The Dolphins, they struggled without Tua. They lost to the Seahawks on the road 24-3.
Well, they really, really did. And honestly, I thought the Dolphins defense, Anthony Weaver, early in the game, it looked like it might get away from them. But I thought the Dolphins defense played really, really pretty well after that for the most part. I mean, they gave up the big play to Metcalf, which isn't good. But other than that, I thought they were getting after Geno Smith. They were hitting him. For like 2 quarters, I think the Seahawks had like 1 first down or something like that. But they just couldn't do anything offensively. Absolutely nothing. Shows you how important backup quarterback is. Skylar Thompson had 2 chances to throw a Hail Mary. He wouldn't throw it, got master blasted. He ended up getting hit later. I don't really understand. It's almost like he didn't want to have an interception on his ledger. I should have pointed out, by the way, the Raiders, I mentioned the Andy Dalton part. Raiders didn't look good on either side of the ball in that game. Minshew and the offense were bad. Eventually, they brought in Aiden O'Connell late in the game. Antonio Pierce, my former teammate, said after the game that guys made business decisions. There's a lot to sort out there for the Raiders. And for the Dolphins, the season's getting pretty late, pretty early here. It might be an ugly one without Tua, and I don't know that they'll see Tua again this season. I would probably be surprised if we do.
Detroit, they hold on late to beat the Arizona Cardinals 20-13.
Detroit came out and it looked like, okay, here's the Lions. They came out on one of those first drives and it was just the offensive line and David Montgomery just running it right down the Cardinals' throat. Who, by the way, this is the first time the Cardinals have a really good rushing attack. They were not able to run it very effectively at all. So this was a good example where the Lions kind of flexed their muscle running the ball up both sides of the ball, and the Cardinals couldn't do it. Kyler Murray had some questionable throws and decisions, not his best outing at all. Felt like the Lions had the ball the whole time. Oh, that hook and ladder was sweet. Love that play call by Ben Johnson.
Dallas is almost able to pull off the comeback, but Baltimore is able to hold them off, keep them at bay, winning 28-25.
I don't know what the deal is with the Cowboys playing like crap at home, and I don't know what the deal is with the Ravens giving up these big leads. They almost blew this again. I mean, letting the Cowboys recover an onside kick. The Cowboys are going right through them. Lamar Jackson saved the day with the third down pass to Zay Flowers, with the run for a first down. The Ravens were rolling early. I mean, Derrick Henry was an absolute force. The Cowboys seemingly had no answer for the running game. I guess give credit to the Cowboys for not quitting and for the comeback, but you can't get that far behind to begin with, right? You're not really giving yourself much of a chance to win the game.
The Rams, they get a last-second field goal to beat the Niners, 27-24.
Well, that's the Rams needed that to even have a chance to stay competitive the rest of the year. I thought Brock Purdy played really well, did some positive things. Jawan Jennings, I don't know why. I'm not sure the Niners needed to pay Brandon Ayuk that much. He has not done very much at all, but Jawan Jennings was the man in this one with so many guys injured. Stafford did an awesome job spreading the ball around, and the Rams are resilient. To be able to come back and finally beat the Niners in that setting was just huge for the Rams to have a chance the rest of the year.
And the Chiefs, they stuffed the Falcons on 4th and 1 in a red zone situation to secure a 22-17 road win Sunday Night Football.
I know that the outside zone is a successful play for the Falcons, but I don't like going lateral in short yardage situations like that because you know that the defense is going to be trying to penetrate, and that's exactly what happened. Nick Bolton made a heck of a play. The Chiefs still don't feel like they're firing on all cylinders. They're not getting much out of Travis Kelce, although Rashee Rice had another big game. But this is kind of who the Chiefs are. Just like last year, it's like the defense. Wharton and Tranquil, the defense leading the way. And the Chiefs just keep winning even though they're not firing on all cylinders. It is unbelievable. It's also the end of the show. I think we're done here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out myfrontpagestory.com. They showed on that Carson Steele game Sunday night, his sister was getting married. Way to have faith in your brother to play in the NFL, getting married on a Sunday while your brothers. You should never get married in football season, period. Let that be a lesson. But at least if you do, get the best anniversary gift ever. myfrontpagestory.com. myfrontpagestory.com. backofficescheduler.com. humanheadnyc.com. Sporticulture, and Pizza Boy Brewing.